everybody, I hope you're okay. Well, I'm back again, and today we're going to look at some of the stitches that I used in the introductory journal. You've already completed one stitch, but before we do that, before we actually look, I'm going to show you what I've bought. I've been charity shop trawling again, and I bought this over the weekend. I went to a gorgeous place in Kent. My son lives there, Rochester. It's full of history. It has a Norman cathedral and castle, and it's on the River Medway. Absolutely glorious. The hottest day of the year. But anyway, there are a lot of charity shops there, and they're quite nice quality, if you understand what I mean. Having said that, they're also quite expensive as well. But anyway, I got this. Now, I rushed into my favourite charity shop at 5 to 5. It was closing at 5 o'clock. And he only just let me in. And I went straight to the section I wanted. This charity shop, part of it, is being laid out like a library. The books are actually laid out on shelves, numbered in sequence under headings, like a library. So it makes it quite easy to go to what you want. So within the 5 minutes I had, I rushed to Gardens, and this was there, and I was so pleased because I have the diary, the Country Diary of the Edwardian Lady, by Edith Holden. And I wanted to collect her other books, but I haven't got this one. So, hey ho, I was well made up. They're lovely books, as you probably know. And the pictures reflect, the diagrams and the paintings reflect what is in her other book, the diary book. A lot more photographs, obviously, for obvious reasons. There weren't cameras about in her time. Well, I imagine there were just in the experimental stage, but people like me wouldn't have had one. So it's a really, really lovely book with gorgeous pictures. However, I do find that I'm very possessive about my books, and I know they're bought specifically with one aim, and that is to use them in journals and artwork. But when it comes to cutting them, it's dreadful. I'm actually getting over it, getting used to it, because I'm seeing it as a way of recycling, because a lot of these books would only be pulped. So anyway, that is a rather good find. And inside, I won't put these too close to the camera because these are real people. But tucked inside is the picture here of obviously a grandmother with her probably children. And it just, I don't know, it just resonates with me that we buy these books, and these books actually were owned and loved by somebody. And I just feel, perhaps, without being too sentimental and romantic, perhaps we owe these people to respect their books and carry on and do what we're doing with them, letting the books live on. Now, I do hope that doesn't sound silly, but you see the faces of these people, especially this lady. I mean, she's probably got a story. It looks to me as if she could be in a care home, and obviously her books have ended up in the charity shop. So yeah, I do, I'm going to do something nice with the book anyway. Enough sentimentality. You can all stop being sick now and say, grow up. What we're going to do is go back to the mindfulness slow stitch folder, journal, and we're going to start here. Now, this is basically geared for beginners, so I'm starting right at the beginning with a basic running stitch. Today we're going through applique, running, cross, and there was another one, a blanket stitch. If we get time for blanket stitch, I really don't want to make this too long because of boring you. So this is the bit we're going to concentrate. There isn't a blanket stitch on here, but we will be using it later on. So I might actually save that until we get to the actual stitch. But we're going to start with applique. Now, an applique is this part here. Now, on the camera, it tends to look like a stain. There's another piece here with white spots on a pink background. You might see that better. There's also a piece underneath here. I'll see if I can zoom in. So turn away, everybody, to see if you can get a better picture. Right, hopefully you can now see that isn't a stain. It's actually gold lace. And the pink background with the white spots is quite clear now. So this is what we're going to start on, the Binker background. So I'll just put that away for a minute and grab what we're going to do. Now, I ordered the Binker squares from Amazon, and they only just arrived this morning, so I'm pleased about that. I didn't realise though I'd ordered a pack of 10, sorry, not 10, 5, measuring 5 by 5 inches. I thought I'd ordered one large piece, but I haven't, so doesn't matter. I did envisage a longer piece than this, but as a starting block, it's okay. Now, the stitch that we used last week or the other day was herringbone. No, it wasn't. What am I talking about? It was feather stitch. I've just got a message on my screen again about my drives. Right, so, and that was the first stitch that I demonstrated, herringbone. Now, what I do advise you to do, if you are following the course, please make these up, because you will end up with a nice little booklet of stitches that you might find useful, and they'll be nice to flick through. So at the end we will make these into some sort of little sampler, a little booklet. So that's the first one. I have the pieces ready for the other stitches we're going to do, but first of all, and this is Hessian, and it's beautiful. I just love the way it frays. You can do so much. Never throw these pieces because they're lovely for couching down. So I'll put those precious threads over there. Now we're going to start this with the applique. And applique means applied, and you're going to apply one fabric to another and secure it. Now, because we're artists, we take shortcuts and we break the rules. But if you were doing this perhaps for examination, in a textile examination, dressmaking, or something more disciplined, then you would need to deal with the edges, and we would be turning the edges over, or under I mean, and securing them down. So when we put them, apply them on a fabric, there aren't any frayed edges. But you and I know, we all know, that part of the charm of journals, junk journals, free stitchery, slow stitchery, art textiles, call it what you want, is that we show the fabric as it is. We like these sort of threads. There's nothing wrong with them. It's part of the nature of the fabric. It's part of its freedom. So, having said that, I'm just going to pop that there. Might have needed to iron it first, but it came straight out of my rag bag. This piece I'm going to put over. Now that's quite acceptable as a applique like that. That's fine as it is. You don't need to add anything else to that, only the stitches. But on the applique in the journal that I showed you, I put lace over the first piece of fabric. I'm going to do the same. This is a really beautiful piece of lace that my son's girlfriend gave me. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's a shame that the camera doesn't seem to pick up the true colours, but it is lime and dark green. So all I'm doing is I'm going to place that on there. So we don't want it totally covering the green fabric underneath. We want to show a little bit of the green. So let's just place it maybe like that, or like that, or even that way. No, I don't like that way immediately. I don't like that. Right, I'm going to just throw it like that and leave it. No, I'm not. And leave it there. So that way, from the two fabrics, this two, we've now made a third one. We now have the lace, the net background on top of the binker, which is giving another effect. So we have the binker, we have the batik, that is a piece of batik there. Then we have the netting on top of the batik, and then we have the net and the little flowers directly on the binker. So all in all, we now have 4 pieces of fabric, or not necessarily 4 pieces of fabric, but 4 different effects. And if you'd like to say, well, you've actually got 5, because you have the effect of the solid flower on top of the binker, which will give another effect. So in actual fact, you're right, we do have 5. I must learn to count at some point. Now, I'm a great believer in pins. Pins, pins, pins. So I'm just going to pin this. I feel I have to apologise, because for weeks and weeks now I've had this sore on the back of my hand, and how I did that, believe this or not, is taking my coffee dyed paper from out of the oven. I burnt it. I burnt the top of my hand on the top of the cooker, not the hobs inside the cooker. And it was really painful, and it did look worse than that. So I had to wait till that cleared up before I actually started making the videos. Now we start with applying this. Now, because this fabric is fine, a darning needle, which we will need because of for the holes, to go through the holes, would split. This would split the fabric. If I show you, it will hold the fabric. Right, can you see there's a definite hole there? I don't think that's coming out, but there's a definite hole there, so we don't want that. So I'm going to use a long crewel needle with a pointed end. You can hear that, how sharp it is. So all we're going to do is a running stitch. We're going to secure this now with a running stitch. Now I think that is as big as I can, yeah, that's as big as I can make that screen. So now you can do this several ways. You can go around the shape and leave it. You can fill it all in and leave it. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to go from hole to hole. And this is a lovely, lovely thing to do. Hole to hole, right across the patterns. Now when you get to the pattern, you lose the holes. So don't worry, just carry on. You don't have to go in the holes. The holes are there as a guide, just to guide you. There. Now that's the first row done already. So you can see how quickly it's going to be to actually complete that. Now finish your last stitch with the needle on the back. That isn't coming, there's too much brightness there, isn't there? Excuse me while I just see if I can get rid of some of that brightness. See if that might help a little bit. That's our journal that we make. That's slightly better. So, and then you bring your needle back through the front, and continue sewing. Now you don't have to go in every row. You can space your stitching as you want to. You can have narrow spaces, you can have wide spaces. It's entirely up to you how you do your stitching. As I said earlier on, we make the rules. It's our artwork, it's an expression of who we are, so we express that in how we want our design to be. Now I'm using this bright colour, it's picked up on the screen, but I'm not sure I would actually use this colour if I were doing this for private use, if I wasn't filming it, I should say. So I've just pulled that out. This should be fun, trying to thread this. Don't think I'm going to, oh, I'm not going to waste time with that. I'm going to leave that bit hanging so I can deal with that later. Unfortunately, I have another one already threaded. So, luckily that was at the end of a row. So don't worry about that piece that I've left hanging there. I should deal with that at the end. Now I have got a mark on the table here to show me where my hands should be, but I can see I keep wandering off. It's because of this table. There's a leg right between where I'm sitting, and I have to sort of have one leg one side, one of my legs one side of this table leg, and my other leg the other side, and it isn't that comfortable, and I'm sure I look most ungainly sitting like this. So I am literally doing this for quickness. So this is how you would applique, or this is how I applique my fabrics when I'm slow stitching. Now for someone who's slow stitching, I'm doing this pretty fast, and that is really because I don't want to make this too long. I'm not sure, you know, the longer videos work for me, so I'm going to try and keep my videos short and sweet. The first one, the introductory one, was deliberately long just to go through the journal for beginners who are interested in slow stitch and journaling, but don't exactly understand or know how to go about it. It's quite a new term, slow stitch, and that people are very confused about it, and it's nothing to do with actually doing it slowly. It isn't about pace or speed, it's about thinking. It's about, as we spoke before, mindfulness, so I won't go into that again. I have actually made a little video for anybody who's interested in mindfulness and slow stitch, but as far as we're concerned, unless everybody says, oh no, combine it with mindfulness, then I'm going to leave it as slow stitch, as stitchery and embroidery for its own sake, just for stitching's sake. Now we've almost come to the end here, so it hasn't taken too long. I can see the sun's gone in. It was so hot over the weekend down in Rochester. It's only about 20 minutes or so away, down the motorway. It was a Dickens festival, because Rochester is where Charles Dickens was inspired to write a lot of his books. He lived in a place called Gad's Hill, and I used to pass this twice a day when I worked in Rochester. I was a teacher down there, and it's a very impressive house. But many of the buildings that he mentions in his book, like the Blue Boar Inn, is still there, and the house where Miss Havisham lived is still there. That's private now, so you can't just wander in and have a look. But it's just the most fabulous place of all. And I'd say to anybody who is thinking of visiting the UK, or anybody from the UK who's thinking of going to Kent for a holiday, please try to visit Rochester. It's absolutely stunning. And as I say, I did work there, so I am really biased actually. It's in the heart of Kent. It's on the River Medway, and it's nice to walk along the river. It's just runs at the side of the castle. But having said that, it was a fun day, a Dickens festival, and my partner and I came across a craft fair in the grounds of the castle. Well, just beneath the castle. And there must have been about 40 stalls there, craft stalls, and they were all different. They were all individual, handmade, nothing shop bought. It was absolutely wonderful. I mean, normally at craft fair, you do find manufactured things, which, well, yeah, it's how people make a living, and, you know, good on them. But when you do come across a craft fair that is predominantly handmade, everything, it was wonderful. Got talking to a lovely lady who's invited me to join a reenactment group, Napoleonic. I did belong to one for Second World War, and that went west when a relationship I was in at that time went west, and you know how that all goes. So yeah, really thinking about it. All authentic. No, it isn't authentic. It was for the Second World War group, but obviously for Napoleonic it isn't, because the textiles just didn't survive. But so that's that. Right, now we're back to reality, and we're going to do a first stitch, which is running. Now, we've done the running stitch there, but this is really for the benefit of the little booklet that we're going to put these in. And it's a reference, and it will be something nice to look at. Now, as I explained before, I not, because these are going to be hidden. The back's hidden. It's not for examination work. No one's going to be looking at it. So if you feel happier not in, like I do, then not. Now, all you're doing for running stitch, as you've done there, so we're working back to front, in, to the back, across and up. Across, in and out, and you're just literally going in and out. Really, I should have done this. I'm out of sequence. I should have done this before starting on the binker. So you can vary the stitches to make them interesting, long ones against short ones. And of course, if you're working with a fabric like Hessian, you can keep it nice and straight if you want to. You don't have to. But the fabric, the weave, actually guides you as well. Lots of little running stitches. That always makes me smile, running stitch, because if ever I run, I always get stitch. So if ever I run, who am I lying to? Run, crikey. I wish. My son runs marathons, does a lot of them, and I look at him, so tall and lean and fit and running all over the place, and his girlfriend, and I think, I'm sure the babies must have got mixed up in the delivery suite when I had him. They must have done. How could I, 5'3" and just as round, if I'm honest, produced a 6'2" son, as lean, fit and healthy? I've no idea. Isn't it strange? Anyway, so finish it off just loop it through a few stitches at the back, and that is that one done. So now we have two. Oops, we have two now for our sample booklet, soon to be three. So the next one, I don't think I'm going to get away with this little piece of wool. No. The next stitch we'll do will be cross stitch. That's another favourite stitch, and there are a couple of ways of doing this. Now, some people like to do the bottom stitches first and then turn around and cross them the other way secondly, like this. So they do the bottom stitch first. You can do it this way and down. It's quite difficult doing it sideways, so you're going to do a base line like this. They're slanted. Now this is how a lot of people prefer doing it. I have a feeling my daughter prefers doing a cross stitch there. She just loves cross stitch. Now this is one way of doing it. So now you have half a cross stitch, which is in actual fact called tent stitch. Now to turn that tent stitch, half a cross stitch, into cross stitch, you go back in there. You see that? And that's your first cross. So then you come out of the bottom here and do it again. Over to there. You see that? And again. And you end up with a nice little row of crosses. So this is one way of doing it. Now I personally am not keen on doing it this way, because if for some reason one of these stitches you need to take out, you would have to take them all the way back. If I needed to take that stitch for any reason, say I hadn't crossed it properly, or it wasn't quite right, it didn't match the rest and I wanted them all to match, and I needed to take that one out, I would have to undo this bit, and then undo the underneath bit. So I'm not keen on that. So this is the way I prefer to do my cross stitches. And then if you have to take one single cross out for any reason, you can just take that cross out. Obviously you'd have to secure the back and the ends, but for me I find this easier. So you're going to start it off the same way as you did this first one here. So across like that. See, now you have the tent stitch, the half cross stitch, and you're going to find up here, go through there. Okay, so now you've got three corners, 1, 2, 3. You've got the 3 corners there, and then you're going to bring it over to form another corner, the 4th corner, which is in line with that one and there, so it meets, it's a true corner. And then you do the same. Now if you're going to do these in a row, you wouldn't go back through that hole, because by going back through that hole to do your tent, you'll be undoing this. So what you will do is come over here, line it up, and of course you'd probably be counting as well, or somebody who is doing a discipline, making it a discipline, would be counting. And then up there, whoops, oh my goodness, I can't see that hole. And then over here, find the corner here and in. So now you have the choice of two ways of doing the same stitch. There, up there, and there. Now the nicest thing of cross stitch as well, you can experiment like with other stitches. You can have them big. They don't have to cross in the middle. You can cross them wherever you want for your experimental sewing. And I just love experimental sewing. I mean, the technique's always the same. And that may be a smaller one here. And you could cross over there if you wanted. And you'd get two crosses. So just have a go, and I tell you now, it is totally addictive. Like slow stitch anyway, it's addictive. So do have a play around with your cross stitch. Back here, and you can see where I haven't broken the thread before. I've just gone from one area to another. Now obviously you wouldn't do that if you were making a tablecloth or something that is going to be viewed this side as well. You would try to keep it tidy. But for junk journaling, and textile art, we don't worry about things like that, because yeah, we do make things like that, but the very nature of the word art, as I explained earlier on, it's all about creativity, and it's all about you thinking. So if you're there and you want to do a stitch there, it's your work. You could take your fabric up there. So as I said, make the rules up ourselves. So having said that, we're now going to practice some cross stitch. So put that there to go with the rest of the samples we're making. And I'm going to start, whoops, that wouldn't be very good, would it? I'm going to start my cross stitch, I think, oh dear, so many decisions here. I'm going to make them big, and I've knotted it. I'm going to make them big for the screen. Might have to lift that up so you can see it. So I'm going to work over nine little holes here. Okay, so I'm going to go over here, oops, over here, down there, and in there. Now this is a different direction that I'm doing, so I'm going in there, down there, and in there. Now as you can see, this is different to the way that I've just shown you on the sample. You will find that the more you get into this and the more confident you get, you'll be taking shortcuts. As long as you get the desired effect on the front, that's fine. That's fine, that's okay, that's good. It's individual, it's yours, you own it. So that is the cross stitch. Now I will finish this off later so we get something half decent looking for the journal. See, this is the problem. I only intended to do a couple of stitches, but it is just so addictive. It's terrible, isn't it? I can't stop now. Now you might come up with another way of doing it, and you might say, hey Teresa, have you thought about doing it this way? So I'm going to leave that there now, and I shall pick that up later and finish that off. Now the other stitch I wanted to show you was blanket stitch. So blanket stitch, I'm going to do in blue so you can see it. And I love blanket stitch, I really do. It's a great stitch to do. Blanket stitch is normally used to edge something. Say normally. Now it is different from buttonhole stitch. buttonhole stitch has a knot, which you would do if you were to hand make buttonholes. This is blanket stitch, traditionally made for edging blankets. And then it was traditionally made for edging all sorts of things before we had zigzag on our sewing machines. Now we've got zigzag, we can use this for pure decoration. So let's see, I find it easier to actually do a blanket stitch over something like couching, which we will be doing. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll start it here on the edge. So in through the back. Now hold it with your finger. You're going to hold it in place like this and then catch it. Okay. Now that stitch will be held in place with the very last stitch. So first stitch, bring it along. Then you're going to go through the back and catch the loop. Oops, try not to pull it too tightly there. So yes, I pulled it a bit tightly. So in through the back again and through the loop. It reminds me a bit of a chain stitch on its side. So in through the back, can you see the needle there? In through the back, pull it and through the loop. Might do a couple more. In through the back, through the loop, pull it. Now this looks very nice, all different lengths, free embroidery, free textiles. Also looks very nice if you vary the length, but if you place them side by side as well, you get such lovely effects with this stitch. And of course they don't all have to be the same length. Experiment. So try dropping it down here. What happens if you drop it down here? Well, you just get a longer stitch. So in through the back, make it shorter. There you go. Make it shorter still. So you can produce all sorts of nice effects with this. You might want another long one. You might want to repeat that. So in through the back. Oops, a daisy. Gosh. And there you go. Right, now I'm going to carry on with this and I'll finish it off, and next time we will put this into the journal. So until then, do see if you can practice this, and if you have time, do make these up. All right, so the first thing we did was the applique. So that is applying, literally applying one fabric to another and securing it, sewing it down. In our instance, we applied 2, and then we looked at running stitch, which is on there. We did the running stitch, varied the spacing slightly, different effect. Then we did our samples there. We did cross stitch. 2 ways of doing the cross stitch. It's up to you. Different effects. Do experiment with that if you can. And the feather stitch we did anyway. So put that over there. Sample time. And this, one of my favourites, blanket stitch. I think that is absolutely lovely. So anyway, have a nice evening or afternoon. I hope you enjoy the weather wherever you are. It's a bit overcast now. I think we had our summer on Saturday. It's probably all the way to winter now, right up to Christmas. I hope not. Anyway, take care and thank you for staying to the end. And I look forward to being with you again next time. Take care now. Bye-bye. Well, I'm back again. I have now finished the sample that we started earlier and have mounted it in the journal. So here we go. Now I've deliberately avoided the first page because I think maybe that needs something like an introduction to the actual journal. Second page will have something put inside, and here it is. Now as you can see, let me make this bigger. I have mounted it, and I mounted it with sticky tape. I didn't think you needed to see me do that, just round the edges underneath and stretched it across. There's still a little bit of give there. I think I could have stretched it a bit more, but it is very firm now. I'm going to enlarge. Oh, I have enlarged it. Right, if I lift that up slightly, right, so as you can see, the blanket stitch that I did yesterday, I've woven through some of it, and that is a really nice thing to do. So that's just under and over, under and over, and there are 3 rows there. Cross stitches here. I've cross stitched one way, and then I've placed another cross stitch on top of them another way. The applique with some cross stitches, running stitches, and feather stitch here, and I've added a few beads sort of cascading round here. This is all running stitch going one way and then going another way, and it makes quite a nice box effect. Cross stitch again, running stitch, and I've outlined it in blanket stitch. Now why I did that was basically because I knew I was putting it on a pink page, and I think without the red then it would have got lost. There wouldn't have been a nice definition between the finish of the work and the start of the page. But I did actually try to put another line of blanket stitch on top of this one, so there would have been 2 lines, but it just didn't work. It didn't look good. So there you are. That is our first page. It isn't completed because we will be using up this space as well, but I think the main thing first is to do the practical sewing pieces and place those, and then we'll go back through the folder again to add the little pieces here. I'm already looking at a couple of runarounds here. I was just playing about a little while ago, just perhaps a pocket, fabric pocket here, a little tuck spot, but these, it won't be wasted. So I hope you enjoyed that, and on to the second page. See you soon.